You had a good breakup when you let your ex near your head with scissors. My ex is my hairstylist, has been since I was like a teenager. So, yeah.
So two things. One, Ash Gallagher is here, and two, Greg's hair actually looks good. So that's where we're starting today with some of our
hard-hitting
reporters and friends. Yeah. That's how that's gonna work. So Ash, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's been a while again. Thank you to everybody else for joining us. Instead of going right into multiple rage-filled rants first thing on a Monday morning, we're gonna do the gratitude thing. So cool. Ash, do you want to start this morning?
Sure. Gosh, I got a few things, but I'm grateful that I'm finally going down to the mountains tomorrow. It's actually going to increase my quality of life. I'm grateful that I am here with you boys this morning. It's good to have a little fellowship, even over politics.
Fellowship indeed.
I'm thankful for dates. There's my third thing. I'm thankful for fresh dates.
All right.
Nice.
I mean, Greg, I'm assuming your three things are like, my hair looks pretty, and my face looks pretty with my hair on top of it. And also water is just a simple thing I get to do to make my hair look pretty. I don't know why I gave you that accent or what that accent is, but
that's very weird. Yeah,
really. Sorry about that.
No, you go first.
I'm grateful that Greg's hair looks pretty.
Oh, come on. Come on.
He was sitting right there.
One of us have good hair. You got it today.
I had no choice. Yeah, you're in our three-wheeled awesome hair tricycle, you're holding the whole thing up. What? Anyway, so I'm grateful that Ash is here this morning. I'm grateful that we get to do this show and hang out with everybody. And actually, I'm really grateful for everybody who showed up at the Church of Reason on Sunday. It felt like the equivalent for us of a packed house, which is kind of fun. And of course, what we do there is just practice gratitude in a weird cathedral thing that we created in Minecraft for the hell of it. So it's good. And yeah, that's it for me.
I'm grateful for all the creative, artsy people that are doing their thing. I'm grateful for creative work and the people that do it.
All right.
We watched I think maybe the first 5 episodes of Treme last night, which is an HBO series about recovery, people recovering from Katrina in New Orleans. It's by David Simon and the same people that made The Wire, which is probably the best police show ever made. And I just was marveling at first of all, it's a great music history lesson. Just the overwhelming number of great musical performances in that show. So I'm just grateful now for people that invest that time. And I like the idea, of reminding people that if you don't like funding for the arts, you should probably turn your damn TV off and never turn it on again. Right? Because saying that that's not a legitimate career path, or it's good that you have time to play your silly music. Well, right now we're counting on those people to keep us sane in some ways, and I'm pretty grateful for that. So I'm grateful for creative folks today. Yeah,
I like it.
Well, that's why I went to. I was like, Corey will like this. So
okay, that's what I figured. Yeah, that's. I mean, but between that and the well coiffed hair, I'm just getting everything I want this morning, which is fantastic.
All right, what do we got from the comments?
Yeah, I was gonna say how many episodes of this have we done before someone got what they really wanted, which was us talking about hair the whole time? Anyway,
there is possibilities, boys.
it's right. You never know. Maybe we missed our calling this whole time.
Right.
Fred said, I'm grateful for a place filled with rational people. I'll let you know if we ever find one.
I think he means us. I think he means us.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I do think we're rational.
So tighten up.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Dreen is grateful for crockpot soup. Mama's cooking again. Yeehaw.
That sounds awesome.
Right?
Andy Beal says, good lighting on Greg, if a touch evil looking. Okay.
It's got the villain lighting.
Is that more evil? Yeah.
Early morning.
You look like you're being interrogated now.
Well, it's very gray here today because we're on the outer fringes of Tropical Storm Sally as she goes by. Going to be a hurricane later today and head up to the New Orleans and Alabama, Mississippi coast. But we're just in the edge of all that outer banding, so that's kind of gray today. And the lawn service guys are here, so sorry about the noise. All right, let's see. Who else? Who else had a gratitude?
Dan said, grateful the fires are not in my neighborhood this rough. That's always good.
Yeah, she lives right on the edge of the Yosemite Valley, which is, there's a lot going on in her area, so it's nice that they're not the tonsorial arts. Oh my
god. What?
Yeah,
I'm confused now.
I don't know.
All right. So there you go. Fred's just excited that he's not the only one who's high in the morning, apparently. I think that means I am as well. Yep. If I was anywhere near any microdosables, I probably would be. Until then, it's just giant macro doses of caffeine.
Well, I'm gonna springboard a little bit off of
Go on.
Greg's creative, gratefulness, because it's funny. Melanie Curtis and I actually chatted for a little bit yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that we've created such a society as a whole that doesn't value the creative arts, that has created a manufacturing way of working and thinking, and not just manufacturing in a plant, but like even your 9 to 5 is manufacturing your time. To the point where you have to produce so much within these certain amount of hours, and people don't have it's become quantity over quality. So when I say manufacturing, I'm really referring to quantity of production rather than quality of production, and quality of production is actually what goes into the arts, because art comes from a different space, and the product is much more painstaking, and so we definitely have to redefine our value for work, our quality of work, and our quality of life within the work. Like, part of me going to the mountains this week is because I need a better quality of life than in the city. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up in Colorado, and so whether I'm on the ocean or in the mountains, I have 100 times better quality of life, and I'm more productive, and I'm more creative, and I'm more thoughtful, and the quality of my work shows because I'm inspired by my surroundings and because I feel my surroundings. And unfortunately, that isn't as often valued in our sort of bootstraps society that we've built, which is deeply unfortunate.
I've been thinking a lot lately about how, I think we're becoming aware of how many people are mentally frail, emotionally frail right now. Like, I think we're seeing more. We're seeing, not that there is more, but we're seeing more depression. We're seeing more problems with how people are day to day. And I think we're also beginning to recognize that a lot of that has to do with the way we have to live our lives to make a living. Mm-hmm. That we have to drive from one ugly place to another ugly place in a commute that's crowded, or, like, circumstantially, I think the things we're seeing as increases in anxiety and medication and depression and things, I think it's becoming clear to more people that has a lot to do with the way our society has been structured and the way we've allowed ourselves to be directed. And I don't know that there's any big breakaway coming from that, but I can see a better awareness of it now. At least we know that it's probably a problematic way of living our lives.
I was watching a documentary that was on, I think I found it on YouTube, And it was actually about grounding. So it was about the idea of, walking barefoot and laying in the grass and, kind of almost the psychological science behind what it does for the body and soul to literally just be on the ground, just be in nature. And one of the people they interviewed was Hemingway's daughter. And she talked about the fact that it has changed her life so much to be somebody who consciously practices grounding and taking walks barefoot. Her new partner was someone who got her far more into it. And so they would go bare feet, when they would take walks and things like that. And she says the history of even alcoholism and depression in my father and, the productivity that was constantly required of him, demanded of him, she said, this is making a difference in my ability to sort of heal some of that ancestral problems and mental health issues and soul issues that have been very difficult for her, for a lot of years, kind of always being in that shadow. And I thought it was a really beautiful, of all the things that they showed within that documentary, which were great, and I believe in, that was the most impactful because we're looking at somebody very well known, her father was well known, and the negative impact that his life and his depression had on her, and the addiction that it had, and all of that, and how this being in touch with just nature, being in touch with what's outside of her, being in touch with something even beyond her, is given her a renewed life force to be able to occupy herself in.
Right.
I think we can all take from that.
Ginny Rippert says she disagrees slightly. Arts are for the rich, and the rich do not want publicly funded the arts, but want to consume and fund what they deem worthy for them. My opinion, that's sort of art patronage. I can kind of see they have control over some of what we consider art or don't consider art. Rich people are the ones making decisions about what gets made into TV shows, about what albums get recorded. So there's something to that. I think I'd like us to rebel soundly against.
We're already doing it, right? I mean, Fred mentioned like this podcast is free, although it's supported by people, and we're of course extremely grateful for that, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to keep doing it. But the barrier to entry is actually really low. It's just a matter of having people go out and put the time and energy hard into getting it out there.
Well, and I think I don't discount her thoughts or opinions on that, because, certainly, I mean, I'm experiencing that. I've experienced that as a freelance journalist, getting the right people to see your work, to care about it, to, give $2 that you're working hard and then pay you for it, for the time and effort that it goes to go in it. So I understand that, sort of, we definitely have 1%ers who essentially help, create the system that decides whether or not you get seen, whether or not you get rewarded for the hard work that you put into it. Artists are also rebels. Every artist I know, rich or poor, is a damn rebel in some form or fashion. So I think I definitely believe that there's room for change within the system. Simultaneously, I do have hope, because the artists that I know, the filmmakers that I know, I mean, there's room to say that they understand that on a pretty deep level. So it's just a matter of, I think, navigation, more or less.
Yeah, that checks out for me. The people that I know that make art are going to make art whether anybody ever buys it or not. And frankly, my dad always, like, his view of things was, why would you do anything if you can't sell it? You know what I mean? Like anything, and my mom caught that from him. And I remember her challenging my daughter one time, oh, you could sell these. And she didn't mean it in a challenging way, but Casey was really knocked back by that. She was like, yeah, I could, but that's not why I'm doing it. And my mom didn't understand that. My mom was like, she couldn't get her head around the idea that this was good enough to sell, but Casey wasn't actively selling it. So, that's a capitalist problem for sure. Yeah. Hey, we went on a little art detour. That's not a bad thing.
Hey,
We did.
I love it.
We did. So I heard through a giant social media conglomerate that you turned off your Twitter account.
I did. I did. My Twitter account is gone. Apparently Twitter makes you deactivate for 30 days before it's officially gone, but I've walked away. I wasn't
Like
using it
the
much.
dealer just waiting in the wings, like you're not.
Right. Right. I was using it less and less and posting less and less to it. And then watching Social Dilemma last night on Netflix, which I do recommend everyone watch if you haven't. It was like, for me, it's not about Big Brother watching. I already know that he does, and I really don't care. It's more about the fact that Twitter in particular has been one of the things they said that was really interesting last night is the way that the social media essentially competes with each other is whoever can predict the algorithms faster becomes the one that's sort of ahead of the game in that moment. And it changes because they're all trying to develop things to compete with one another. But, Twitter is one of those, and right now 45 uses it as his official place to make statements, which I find absurd. But Twitter, I think at one time was very useful in the sense that when I was sitting at CNN and the Arab Spring hit and we were all in the newsroom and we were trying to find activists and artists and anybody in the streets that we could get to tell us something because we couldn't even get our own people in there. It was useful in a way. And I feel like even just over the past maybe 3 or 4 years, it's almost become this entertainment value and the division that's created on it because you only have so many characters. You can't have a lucrative debate. You can't have connection. You don't get rewarded for even what is you're either rewarded or slashed. And I just felt like I was more depressed on Twitter all the time. And I have complicated feelings about Facebook and Instagram too. But Twitter was it seemed very clear to me that I was just like becoming angry every time that I was on it. Now the trolls don't matter. I've had my share of trolls, but trolls don't matter. Typically they're comedic relief, to be honest with you, because most of the time they're just clowns. But I think that like when we really begin to see that some of the damages that are done, I felt like watching it last time, I'm like, you know what, I can cut that out because I don't even need it. So why even have it there? Like, why have the temptation there? I'm not using it. I don't care. And I don't want to be drawn back into it. Maybe it helps that I'm from a generation that didn't grow up with it. So maybe it's easier for me. Maybe it's easier for some of the older folks to not be on it as much or whatever. That depends. I mean, we also have a 70-year-old man that sits, on his toilet every night and goes through a list. So it was one of the things that I was like, here's one thing I can start to do to kind of remove myself from the constant stimulation of, I don't keep Facebook on my phone. I haven't for ages. If people want to send me a private message on Facebook, it's going to have to wait until I sit down on my laptop and take a look. Instagram I keep on my phone, but even then, like I don't even have enough room on my phone to even have it up all the time. So when I post, and then I erase things that I don't need. So I feel like for me, social interaction is a lot more like this. Like I love that we can use technology to do what we're doing right now. But when it comes to just kind of the scrolling and sort of the mindless game that comes in it and the way they set the algorithms, I'm really turned off and I'm over it. Because it's not encouraging more interaction. It's encouraging less, and it's encouraging how you think because all the algorithms are based on what do you want to see? What do you think you see? What do you click on the most? Like they are predicting us in a sadly profound way. And I have such a value for interaction. Now, again, to me, it's not about the technology as much as it is the game of the program. So my best friend and I, we have built a significant amount of our relationship on FaceTime and texting and emails through the years. We've been friends for 20 years, and she's closer to me than anyone. And we see each other when we have the opportunities, but we also talk pretty much every other day, every couple of days. She's close to me as a sister. And I felt it when COVID-19 happened and we were trying to navigate, like she was now home with her kids more often. And she was having to do school, and we've had a couple of moments where we've had to navigate because she'll call me and she'd be like, I miss you. I always miss you, right? Because that energy has been expressed with each other on this platform to be able to see one another. And at least, and I've heard a couple of psychologists that'll say like, look, video is better than nothing. Voice is better than nothing. And I've come to realize that I value that part of the technology, and maybe email just because I'm a writer, so I like writing pretty things. But that part of the technology more than I have maybe the social media aspect, which I feel has created a bit of a humdrum, mediocre existence with the world, and it's exhausting. It's because it is based around a capitalistic system that, you know, isn't really doing us a lot of favors.
Yeah, watching that was really.
What were your thoughts on it? What was your space in it?
I mean, this is stuff that, and even, actually, Michelle said it best. She was like halfway through it and stopped it to kind of say she finally gets why I've been spending so much time and energy building Chirp and trying to set the boundary conditions to at least address some of the things that are in there. And she said, you know, I kind of knew all this stuff before, but when you see it all in one spot, organized the way it is in the documentary, it's pretty compelling. And you know, that's I've been thinking about exactly all of this stuff, but I had exactly the same reaction. Like it made me want to quadruple down on changing the model. Because I mean, that's really what it boils down to, right? Is the monetization model of all of these social media platforms is why they get incentivized to basically make addicts, right? Like eyeballs on Magic Rectangle for milliseconds at a time, they can tell you exactly how much money they're going to make, you know, over the entire population, which is just not healthy. And it's distinctly solvable. It's clear that we want to have a social experience online. Online was designed for it, right? Like that's the whole point, right? To be able to communicate with some kind of value at a distance. And it's not like Facebook and Twitter and other things. I saw Casey up the thread a little bit talking about how, you know, that her Twitter feed is all experts and she gets news, you know, within milliseconds or whatever, right? So she's cultivated that. So there's a lot of value there. And I think that, you know, one of the things that I'm trying to inject into the culture of Chirp from the ground up is a level of personal intentionality, right? Like, you know, setting the habit of showing up there, you know, the first app that I open on my phone or whatever, that's part of a much bigger theme that I think about all the time. And this came up when we were watching it as well. Like, we paused it so many times walking through it. The algorithm, like Facebook is not the way that it is because someone said, let's make something that is toxic and gross. Right. Facebook did one thing really well. Let's find out what's going to make them stay here for a few more seconds. That's it. Right. And the thing that will, you know, basically do that the most is the, you know, fear of flight, the basically flicking the amygdala and getting people pissed off, especially if they've trained the algorithm like I did.
Yeah, of course.
To show them, I trained their algorithm to send me dog shit by reacting to it over and over and over and over and over again. Right. Now, granted, like, we're never going to have any algorithms like that. We're not going to track that kind of information on Chirp. Like, that's something that we're just, you know, it's not something we need to do to create the positive experience that is going to have value that, quite frankly, over time, we believe will make people choose to hang out there instead of Facebook, right? And it's not going to be everybody.
I think that I appreciate that about Chirp. Now, again, I've just jumped in on it in the last few days, so I'm kind of exploring it and poking around and, you know, trying to figure out what it looks like and choosing the posts that I think that, you know, based off the stuff that I can contribute in a positive way, to educate or to, you know, expand. But, you know, I think I appreciate the aspect of sort of what I like to call the communal reward system, right? Because in a way, like, the coins and stuff are about sort of communally rewarding someone for, you know, or appreciating them for, you know, posting that thing, for taking the time to think that it might be, you know, worthy of someone else's attention, you know, just kind of creating the space of a little bit more interaction, because the coins become something. They become not necessarily monetary, you know, and I know you have some goals for that, but like, it's more than just a monetary, it's more of it's a greater acknowledgement, right? Like, this is a well-deserved element. And I think that that's really important. So, you know, I think I appreciate what you're doing with it and sort of thankful to be, you know, maybe part of the experiment or whatever, because I know it's all a little bit of an experiment right now. But I think that's the thing is that social media needs to become more social again. You know, I posted, I think, in one of the posts that I put up last night after I watched the Maria Ressa documentary, which I do think is good for people to look up. She said that in the Philippines, two things that were really important. One, A lot of tech conglomerates and so forth will test things out in the Philippines before they take them to the US, which is fascinating. And two, she said that what they found, what she discovered in her case that she has been fighting against, as she is a journalist who has been convicted of certain levels of libel, and Duterte is basically 3 steps ahead of 45. Like he's basically already he called out the fake news. He was already, like, a few years ago saying we're going to kill certain people. You're going to pay the price. You're going to go to jail if you're a journalist. I mean, he was just outright with it. So the documentary shows all of this, and because they revealed his carelessness around his little drug war. And what's interesting is that she's found that information about her, entirely false, was going around, and they connected it to 26 Facebook groups that all interacted with each other, that helped create the algorithm that essentially deceived millions of Filipinos into believing false news about her and called for her death threats as a result of it. Led by people that are connected to him, inspired by him. I mean, people that follow him.
Well, and there's a couple of people, my focusing in on wanting to own how I trained Facebook's algorithm was what I was trying to get at. Dave was talking about, like, suggesting that I'm saying that I'm using the guns don't kill people, keep people kill people argument. That's not what I'm doing. Facebook is profiting intensely from this simple little brain hack that they let continue that does exactly both of those two things, right? Like, it realizes that I'm going to, since the Obama administration, I was going to war and comment threads forever and ever and ever, and thought I was doing the right thing. And I was training that algorithm ruthlessly to send me dog shit people, because, like, every time I would just argue with them, right? So I trained that thing, but that same algorithm is also the one that allows those kind of group hives to go out and basically create massive the appearance of validity, because it's everywhere, right? Like they're and Trump uses this all the time, like the mirror effect. Like we wax philosophical about it on this all the time. It's why that joke about licking doorbells or doorknobs and it's why the explainer joke, like that's why those things are funny over time, right? And they only get more funnier, especially when you explain it ruthlessly. But no, like, Trump uses the mirror effect constantly, and like an idiot. Like, there's no way that anyone could possibly be dumb enough to think that the virus is just going to go away if you just keep seeing it. Except that it totally fucking does work. We watch it.
In a way, and that challenges us to consider our values, because you actually just said a line a couple of times that it's incredibly important. You train the algorithm to do it. So the algorithm was created so that we are training it, which means we have to reevaluate our value system.
Corey used to get really mad when we first started working together whenever the term fake news was used, even if we were using it joking, right? Something obviously true would come out and I would go, fake news. And he would go, that's fucking, don't do that. And that's kind of how that's gone. Like, fake news is now anything we don't like. It's what people say. Right. So yeah, there's that call and response kind of thing that happens with it. But I want to do. I have not seen the documentary that you guys are talking about. Like, my feed was electric with it yesterday. A lot of people watched it. I'm gonna have to sit down and watch it. I haven't yet. But I have to tell you that I had the same experience as you. Like, I didn't understand. Like, the first thing I ever saw about Twitter was some basketball player, okay, poop is coming out, and I was like, I don't, no thanks. But when the Arab Spring happened, it was like, oh, this is what it's for, right? This is the real usefulness of Twitter. And I don't know why my experience with Twitter is different than most other people's. I'm not on it enough. I don't post on it very much. I retweet things that I think are of value. I'm not trying to be an opinion shaper with my own posts. I do that more on Facebook than I do on Twitter. But I actually love that I can get Amy Siskind's daily running commentary on the Trump administration. I do get small 146 character bites of that, but there's always something for me to click to learn more. So I've always been a communicator. Like it seems like it's not an accident that I ended up working in broadcasting. You know, it was just sort of built for it. And you know, conveying information to people and getting information, going to sleep thinking I'm going to miss something. You know, I hate going to sleep ever because I'm going to miss something. Something's going to happen and I won't know about it. So I like that. I like being bombarded with information, or at least it's how I function, even if I don't always like it or I'm not always comfortable with it. So I value that even on Facebook. And I understand that algorithmically it's you know, it's being trashed by my own likes and dislikes, but there's still, I'm good at sorting and sifting information. I'm good at finding nuggets that are valuable in a bombardment of information. And so that aspect of social media doesn't bother me in the way it bothers some other people.
I also think though that one of the things that is, at least for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I think for me is that when it comes to things like news, for example, like we were going, you know, you go back to the Twitter example, I actually look at news sites. So I actively will type in CNN.com, or I'll actively type in BBC, or I even have a button that takes me to a Reuters and an Associated Press link that I go to on a regular basis. And so, you know, in my favorites. So I'm already kind of going to the news sites, and I really value sort of reading through it. So to me, I feel like I'm already stepping into a lot of, and as a journalist, I also get a lot of emails. Like, I don't know if you guys realize, but I still get a lot of emails from NGOs, activist sites, because as a journalist, I was subscribed to all of it because I was covering all of it. So I still get a lot of that stuff that comes to my inbox. So I feel like for me, like Twitter then loses its value. And because I'm already going to the places that I would want to go, or that I think are good to go to get information, whether, you know, it's something I believe in or not. And I also know where to go. If I really want to see kind of how the other side's thinking, for me, it's really not that hard to go, oh, you know, let's check the Breitbart site. What are they doing? You know what I mean? Or what are they saying about this? Or let me choose to click this video, you know, that might have an interesting debate on it, or, you know, whatever. So I feel like for me, again, it's personal, but I feel like for me, I feel like, you know, if Twitter was the bombardment of it, I don't necessarily need it because I'm already making the choices of where I want to go in my web browser to do it. Not everyone's going to do that. I understand it might not be for everybody, but I felt like for me, and I think with what Twitter has become in the political spectrum right now, it was far too exhausting. And I am on Facebook, and I am on, you know, Instagram, and you know what I mean? So I think it's just about making choices for where my attention goes. You know, Corey was talking about the intentionality, and I think that's, you know, that's a big part of it, is sort of creating my intention, and then also making sure that I don't miss out on the world around me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And here we are, like, you know, this is streaming on Facebook. Most of the people that are hitting our comments are on Facebook. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with that. Facebook is a crime scene. Us giving attention to Facebook is helping them, right? And again, we're all there because the network effect is there, and it's like there is like some crossover appeal with the whole, you know, commons that's been created. But I mean, I can't get over that now. Like, just think about like the number of things that we've been seeing, and like, yes, you know, I train the algorithm or whatever, but the algorithm was, you know, it's designed to affect the lowest common denominator functionality at a microsecond level that you have to be super conscious to see happening. Most people aren't, and most people never will be, and they don't give a fuck. Like, you know, like never the Duterte thing and Trump or whatever. Like like Zuckerberg literally said, like, it's not our purview whatsoever to decide whether something is true or not. Right, which means that Trump can lie 24/7 for money, and the Russians could do it, and everyone else. And when they come in front of Congress, they're just full of shit. Like, they're completely and totally full of shit.
Which is why Maria Ressa says now it is Mark Zuckerberg's responsibility. Like, maybe
it always was. No, it always was,
into this
because
world,
he knew.
You have a responsibility to it.
Right. He categorically knew. I can guarantee you that he knew everything that was going on in 2015 and 2016. He fucking knew, and he did nothing. And now they're saying, okay, well, we're going to stop advertising a week before the election in an election where everybody's voting by mail a month early, right? Facebook is dog shit. Right. And again, we're all there, which is why I'm like, okay, we're slowly but surely building this little life raft thing. Well,
Yeah.
there is until there isn't, right? Like,
Right,
like I'm going to
right.
be proselytizing this for a long time, obviously, and I'm for sure I have a I am officially biased, right? I'm making the thing that I would like us to all move to, but I think there's a really compelling argument for it. I mean, that we're by our attention there, we're making Zuckerberg money with every millisecond that we spend on his site, and he's using that money to do nothing but rat fuck civilization. And they're like everything they're doing on it, Twitter's done 100 times more, right? So like, are they suddenly going to turn around and actually start doing more? I mean, I don't see it.
But you know what was really interesting in the film, and Greg, you'll see this. The Vincent, whatever his name is, he's the guy from Greg. He's the guy from Mad Men that plays Pete. He's in this movie. They do like a reenactment kind of thing to give you a visual, and he plays the creepy character in it. He always plays a creepy character.
Yep.
But basically, like, there's a moment where the kid, they trying to showcase this kid who doesn't have his phone for a few days, and like the guy's confused, like, where is he? Like, what? How could we get him back? Like, what do we do? Right? Almost as if they're like the tech that's trying to like entice him or seduce him. And what's interesting about that is that, again, it goes back to this is what it is. How do we make shifts for ourselves? Let's create the value for ourselves to say, I'm going to spend a little of extra time with my partner, my child, my friend. I'm going to go take a hike. I'm not going to take any photos when I go on this venture, because I want to enjoy every bit around me. I'm going to turn my phone off, or I'm going to just, I understand for emergencies in the world we live in, but you turn it off and you keep it in your pocket or whatever, until you're done. Let's spend a couple of extra hours of the day cooking in the kitchen and having someone over in our kitchen and talking to them while we cook and drink a glass of wine. Let's find a way to connect. I am for, I think the ability for us to connect, I think, through social media does bring up some positive elements. There are people, there was a couple of people that were like, well, we wouldn't know who you are if there hadn't been this, and I certainly probably wouldn't be as involved with you guys if there hadn't been some. So there's positive elements to that, but it's where do we take it to? It's not where it comes. It's
Right.
It's the old saying, it's not where it comes from, it's where do you take it to. So where do we take it to now, and how do we create our value system to keep ourselves in check, so that and that includes when it comes time for voting. Are you going to be on Facebook looking on how to vote? Or are you actually going to go to the government websites, look up who your city council people are, look up who the people are running for judges, taking time, not just voting based off of whatever algorithm one of the social systems gave you, and actually vote. Put it in the mail, do your thing, like, take time. So I think it's more about our value system.
Well,
they don't have any incentive to change, but we should.
That's the thing. Like, and Fred's in with like the good on Facebook is undeniable, and it really has connected. Well, it's connected all of us, really. Like that's a real thing that has happened. But coal power was good too, right? And then it wasn't. We took the idea of power and energy and fuel and started making them more efficient. So taking this forward is exactly what we need to do. I'm really glad that you said that. And I had this weird idea when I was watching the documentary, and it's now something I'm going to advocate for until it happens. Although my team is probably going to look at me like I'm freaking crazy. I'm going to turn the site off for an hour a week.
Right.
Just make it nothing but a pop-up that says, go and do something interesting. We'll be back in an hour.
Right.
Right. Put your fucking phone down. Like we're in our culture, in this little space we're building, we're designing an opt-in thing that's all about, intentionality. So put your fucking phone down and come back in an hour and tell us what happened. But like nobody can access it at all.
I guess I didn't realize that. I've been doing better about that, about getting away from my phone or the internet for a few hours at a time.
You got a hot girlfriend, man. Come on. Like, it's like, why would you be around your phone? It's like, fuck it. Let's go. What, you want to go swimming naked again? Okay, fine.
I know. It predates that. It predates that by a little bit. But
okay.
But yeah, no. But I do recognize the thing that Ash said about, make a decision not to take your camera out when you're experiencing something. Just have it be just for you. Right. That's a thing that I struggled with, but now I do pretty rarely. Although the weird irony is I just now have reacquired a DSLR. I haven't had a good camera in like 5 years. Now I have one, and I'm like tempted to take it with me everywhere. to see what I could see.
There's a difference between your DSLR and your phone. Your phone is an instant gratification of attention.
Your
DSLR
phone
is
much
learning
more
how
like
to
a
use a camera.
right. Yeah, the phone is much more like a Swiss Army knife. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's my GPS, it's my communication device, it's my actual telephone, it's a radio, it's all these other things. So I love this conversation though, because I have a pretty good. I know how fucked up the algorithm is and all that stuff. Like so many of the comments, I think it might have been Dave said, I don't even need to see the documentary. I know how fucked up this is. And I kind of feel that way. I know. I get it. At the same time, like I feel more like Fred does, right? That there is a connection ability that there's just no other way to get this. There probably are going to be other platforms that do this better, but that's efficiency. That's getting away from coal and going to things that don't pollute as much, right? We're going to find a better way to do this. But I reconnected on MySpace with people I had not seen in 15 or 20 years. And there was no other way to do that before MySpace. And then Facebook became sort of a better, more efficient version of that. So I like it as a connectivity tool. Like I would not know about Ash Gallagher if it was not for social media. I would not know you. I would not have had the opportunity to do these shows with you. Same with Corey, so
it's the pluses and minuses, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't discount the positives. Like I said, my best friend is somebody that we've used social media, we've used WhatsApp, we use FaceTime, we use email, we use all of this technology that has helped enrich our relationship in a really, really positive way. Because I'm the one that travels, I'm the one that goes everywhere. So there is absolutely things that are positive about it. But I think it's about, again, just deciding you said connectivity. I like that. Using it for connectivity rather than,
doom scrolling. And I do a fair bit of doom scrolling myself.
Yeah, doom scrolling, right. People using it for their news, or people using it for, every little bit of this, that, and the other thing. I think it's use it for, let's get back to what it was kind of purposed for before, which is our connectivity, our reconnectivity, our ability to tap into, someone's world, and let's not be afraid of the vulnerability of that world, because unfortunately what it's shifted to is far more of just the doom scrolling and posting for the sake of posting without having any forethought of how we're sharing and who we're sharing with, and the kind of conversations we want to have, whether we agree with others or not.
Right.
So connectivity is the reason it should be used, but unfortunately it's been turned into an advertising pool, a cesspool.
Right. Well, I think it's directly related to the rise of authoritarianism internationally.
Yeah.
Right. So we can all say, hey, it's cool to connect with friends and stuff like that. It's all fun and games till the nukes start flying. And that's like, it gets that bad. Like that's where this ends. Right. Like Trump is an authoritarian psycho who's bragging about having a new nuclear weapon. Now we have a new nuclear arms race, and it's all the same thing. The fact that we can connect is great. We just in my mind, the more I keep thinking about this, and of course I'm trying to build the life raft to get out of here, but I feel like we don't have a choice. I think we have to, because if we don't, this only goes in one direction, right? This isn't getting better, and it won't get better. There's a lot of people talking about regulation, and that's fine. Like I hope that works. I have absolutely no faith in the idea that somebody's going to be able to regulate Facebook internationally, which is what it would require.
Well, there are certain things in Europe you're seeing. For example, if I click on certain articles from Facebook, I get a pop-up screen that says, because you're in Europe, you have to agree that that you are, clicking onto this thing, da 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 da. It's a way of like making sure that people know what, are somehow being conscious, maybe.
Right.
I don't know if it works or not, but hey, the problem is you do have authoritarian governments. I've seen this in Sri Lanka. I've seen this in other places where they'll completely shut down the social media to try and keep people from communicating at all, to go protest out in the streets, when the government is being corrupt. So I've seen that happen. In Sri Lanka, they thought, oh, we can control terrorism because terrorists had used Facebook to get a hold of it. But then when it came time for their people to protest in the street, that wasn't the way to control that the answer was control your police force, and actually have an active attention in your,
imagine that,
with your constituents, we can prevent more terrorism. But the point was then you had the good side of it. You had the people who were trying to connect for that. So it's almost as if we have to come up with maybe not new ways, but different ways. Like you said, you're trying to build, the lifeboat. We need maybe a few more lifeboats. And
I think you're right.
There are some that are better. There are some that are better than others. I prefer Instagram over Facebook. Why? I don't know. For some reason, it feels more intimate, even though it's owned by the same company. The way maybe it's designed that way. I also like the photography aspect of it. I like the aesthetic aspect of it. But then, I also hate the fact that there are a lot of the rhythms changed and it started promoting a lot of influencers who already had 10, 20,000 followers. And you had a lot of people who were building businesses, not just myself included, but others who were like, oh, now we're actually losing people because, it's not even being shown because of the capitalistic round and round that gets created within the system. So it's like, okay, well, where do we go? Where do we go from here?
Right.
From this line.
And it'll be interesting to see if ideas like Chirp can scale up, because right now I'm seeing everything that gets posted on Chirp pretty much. I don't follow all the channels, but I see, I get the sense I see most people's posts on Chirp because there just aren't that many people on it just yet.
But latest is literally everything. So if you're just scrolling through latest, you're going to see literally everything that gets posted.
Right.
I would. Just as far as the number, I think there's between 100 and 200 people right now.
Right. That's very small, right? And maybe that's what ends up happening is little groups of 200 to 300 people that are manageable size, so you can see everything from just the people you follow. Yeah, I think that but we have to cope with the idea that there are billions of people on Facebook.
So I actually pitched something to Kurt, and as usual, he thought I was a complete fucking lunatic. Where because there's not going to be any personal follow thing, right? Like one of our partners is like, I really want to be able to follow people, and both Kurt and I are like, nah, I don't think so. So yeah, Elizabeth, you can't post outside channels, which is sort of the whole point. But you can make any kind of channel you want and post there, which is an interesting little flip that we're kind of testing out. But I was thinking about maybe trying to apply Dunbar's number to the groups.
I don't know what that is.
Dunbar's number is the average size, or average max size of tribes for the first 200,000 years of humanity, designed around the number of human beings that you can actually have in your head at any given time with context.
Which is how many? What's that number?
It's about 250.
Interesting.
See, I think that's a manageable size of inputs.
Right. Like, and again,
could you choose the tribe that you want to join up in?
I mean, you could be in any number of channels that you wanted to be in, right? So like it's basically a constraint on the channel side, not on the people side. Right. I think there's a really good argument that idea is completely stupid, but it's been in my head for 24 hours now.
But I mean, I think that's something. I mean, again, maybe.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Ash? Yeah, Ash froze up on us. I want to shift gears a little bit to something that came up yesterday.
Okay.
It's actually it came up last week, and I had it slightly wrong, and I want to correct myself, because this is one of those places I spent 2 hours yesterday angry at everybody on the internet over the story about California now makes pedophilia legal. Right? They make it legal for pedophiles to rape children. And I want to really clarify what the law in California now does. Okay, here's the problem. There's latitude in the sex offender registry in California, okay, for the judge to make a determination based on the relative ages of the participants in sexual activity. Okay, a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old having sex is a crime because of the age of consent. But if they're if they're close to the same, well, that's weird. If they're close to the same age, okay, the judge has some latitude there. They basically call it the Romeo and Juliet factor, right? That these are young teenagers in love having sex, which, shocker, is a thing that happens. However, if the sexual contact was vaginal in nature, they had latitude. But if it was anal or oral, they didn't. So gay kids were gay kids were automatically getting added to the sex offender registry.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I just need 30 seconds of a rewind, because obviously I
this is
out
about
and
Greg, okay.
Greg made a turn. This is a good turn though, because I've seen this on weirdly.
This is about the California law adjustment and who gets on the sex offender registry. Okay. And
got
what's
it. All
being
right.
portrayed is it's now okay for a 20-year-old to rape a 10-year-old in California. It makes pedophilia legal. This is what's being posted on the internet, on Facebook.
Okay.
And the correction here is, first of all, if the victim in a sexual abuse case is younger than 14 years of age, you are going on the sex offender registry, period, full stop. So the specific post about a 20-year-old can now fuck a 10-year-old and not be on the sex offender registry, that's not true. That's not what happened here. It's being portrayed as making pedophilia easier. But what's actually in play is that if the sex was homosexual in nature, if the sexual contact was what's commonly gay sex, sodomy or oral sex, then the judge didn't have any latitude to keep those kids off the sex offender registry. So you had 15 and 16-year-old kids having to register forever as sex offenders for having gay sex, and not the same standard for heterosexual kids. For kids that were involved in what you would
well, it also gives them
just
leeway
vaginal.
for like the 17-year-old girl to have her 20-year-old boyfriend or vice versa. Do you know what I mean?
and although we might be skeeved out by that, they're
Yeah.
above the age of consent, and that's that is what it is. So it's a balancing of the law to protect gay kids and gay young adults from being labeled automatically as sex offenders because they're gay. And what's crazy about this is that the coalition of California agencies, organizations, and people that wanted this change includes the California Association of Police Chiefs, right? All the advocacy groups for child sexual abuse advocates and the LGBT community. That's who asked for this change. And so you get portrayed as, this is the future liberals want. And that's literally how it's being posted, that liberals want 20-year-olds to be able to fuck a 10-year-old and get away with it. No. That's what's wrong with Facebook. But at the same time, I wouldn't have known that people were actually saying that and been able to counter it and been able to go find them links to fact checks about this law without Facebook showing me my own outrage. Do you know what I mean?
The problem with that is that nobody gives a shit, Greg. Like you're not going to change any minds. You didn't change a single mind with that. And that hurts me to say, but you know that it's true.
I don't know that it's
out of 1,000
people.
You might change one mind.
I mean, how many times? That's how many times one less dead gay kid. That's one less homophobic killing.
Right, and that's fantastic.
So I'm never not going to say.
No, of course not. Of course not. But what I'm saying is that all of this has become a massive tidal wave of stupid because all the stupid people get to reinforce each other on Facebook. Right, and now, granted, that even being said, like. That's not even a problem that Chirp or anything else is really set up to solve. Although we keep thinking about trying to figure out how to do that, right? By decentralizing it and giving people a lot of editorial control with the channels. But like it's commendable. Like I have this conversation with Fred all the time. It's something we have to do, right? It's not like you can't, just sit there or whatever. But it's a massive, massive problem. And you trying and very rightfully working to solve that is like throwing a rock at a tornado.
I can be shamed. I can be shamed into correcting something that I'm doing that's harmful to people.
You can. I know you can, Greg.
Well,
I know you can.
And Pollyanna that I am, I believe that's also true of other people.
But I love that about
you. I'm pretty sure Pollyanna had good hair too. So,
right. Dragging us right back.
I can understand the catch-22. The catch-22 here is that the same system that tells you that this is what's being spread is also the same system that started it really in the first place. So, I think it's dealing with that stuff. We can't convince the people that are completely convinced that this is happening because they have made the decision in their mind that this is the algorithm, by the way, that they are training to constantly give this information and therefore affirm everything they think, even though everything they think is wrong. So this comes back then to the value system, right? I think that this is where the personal connectivity comes into play. It's where, actually the comment on Facebook isn't going to do shit, but perhaps creating relationships will. Somebody that I have a relationship with is far more going to hear what I have to say and maybe consider something I have to say than people that just see me out there. There's a gentleman by the name of Stan Mitchell who is out of Tennessee and Washington, Seattle. He's a brilliantly wonderful man, but he is a pastor who is very much an advocate for LGBTQ youth. And he was a pastor who once was against it, and he has had a radical life change, and he is doing incredible ministry to help young kids. He gets calls late at night with parents who are they're not affirming to their children, and their children are being kicked out, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. But one of the things that I've noticed about him is that he really puts an emphasis on the pastors that he is trying to help change their minds. It comes from a deep dive relationship that he builds with them to have those kinds of conversations where then they take what he has to say and go, oh, I really hurt a lot of people, haven't I? But it's taken that time. Like the random things that he might comment on someone's Facebook is never going to change any one of those pastors' minds. But the relationships that he's taking time to build is helping change people toward a better way forward for LGBTQ youth. And it's really, really vital. So I think that because you have the same system that told you that this is being said is also the same system that created it in the first place, Corey's going to be more right, I think, in saying that you might not change your mind, but
you should still do it. I'll just finish that up. I absolutely love the people that like you and like Fred and like basically everyone else in this thread at some point or another that have taken the time to do that. Fred talking about it's, one drop of water moving one grain of sand is how you build the Grand Canyon. But there's a fucking asshole with a hose at the front. And all we really need to do is shoot that guy in the face.
I'm never going to let that guy decide how I'm going to act.
Except, honestly, Greg, he already has. Right. Like honestly, like the amount of interactions that we have online, right? Like we have absolutely been conditioned. The reason why we're served on Facebook what we're served is because we trained the algorithm. So like that ship has sailed. Now, granted, like, have you allowed that to make you a cynic? Like it has clearly done to me? No. And that's fantastic. Right. But I want to start thinking about the systems oriented things that will actually change this, because my deep abiding fear is that you are not enough. Right. This one-on-one, really well coiffed Pollyanna. That was just solid work. But that one-on-one thing, it gaming that out in, looking at how that is going to trend, we already know it's not enough. Right. And this is a serious thing that could very well lead to an authoritarian take over the entire world and people in concentration camps getting burned up. So, looking at all, right now, 1,000 people are dying of COVID today. Right. And California is on fire and the president of the United States is like, they didn't vote for me. It's like, that's the thing he said out loud. Right. And we're like, well, if we just have one more conversation, do it. Because it's I'm not going to knock the
conversations, because I do believe that sometimes if you can change one person's mind, but have the conversation.
That's the thing. Like if you're not doing anything else, yes, well, of course you want to do that. But my deep abiding fear is that unless we face the progenitor of this, we're going to lose.
Mishi and I had a funny conversation last night where she said, well, you're very stubborn, because we were talking about this argument, this and the one about Antifa setting fires, and how mad I was at the internet yesterday. She said, well, you're very stubborn. And I said, no, I'm right.
That's the problem, though.
She patted me on the shoulder like, oh, okay, honey. Okay, honey. Sure you are, dear.
We can't obsess ourselves with rightism either. Because I think even if we're right,
I was being sort of sarcastic, but when I double down with you in a thread about something, it's because I'm pretty sure I'm right. Speaking of which,
okay, I'll just include the pat on the shoulder.
Yeah, well, we didn't leave ourselves much time to have an argument about Bob Woodward, now did we?
We have a journalistic expert here, and so I'm very Ash, I freaking love you, and so your opinion on this counts for 10x what mine does. Just everything that you would like to say about Woodward, just know that you're amplifying a propaganda piece that is currently being used by the authoritarian president of the United States.
Of course. Look, here's my issue. My issue is that 45 is absolutely 100% responsible for the lack of response and ultimately responsible for the amount of deaths that have happened in the United States. He knew it from the beginning and he lied, and he needs to be held accountable for that. I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm making that clear. Bob Woodward, here's my issue. My issue is, would it have made a difference? I don't know, but there is still a sense of journalistic integrity that needs to come with the fact that you sat on the tapes for months. Would it have made a difference? I'm not going to say that it would or it wouldn't, because I really don't know whether it might have been able to mobilize local communities faster or better. Forget the president for a moment. But for me, the journalistic integrity comes into play. There's still a responsibility regardless of whether or not you get the outcome that you want. There's something big like that. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have done the research. I think sometimes you have to confirm things, but here's the thing. That guy has more access to sources to confirm his information than most journalists have out there. We already knew what was going on in China. He has basically, his excuse has been, well, I had to confirm it. I get all that, but all you had to do was make phone calls to your colleagues in China, and I know you got a few. All you had to do was call over to Asia, and I know you got a few. Don't sit there and tell me he did not. It took him months and months to get a hold of second sources for him to verify the information, and he might as well just put it in his book. Bullshit. You could have done it within days. You could have done it within a couple of weeks. He has access. This is a man that is well known. This is a man that has been well revered. This is a man with a long, long career. To me, regardless of what the outcome is, when you've done your due diligence and your journalistic integrity to confirm your sources, and you have important information that could help even one person, even one city, even one community, you do that. We know Trump lies. We know that he's lied even before COVID. We knew that he lies. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. He's just perpetual about it. And he doesn't care. And he's narcissistic and he thinks he's great. That man has no sense of humility whatsoever. But I think in this case, to me, it has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with his journalistic integrity, and I think that he could have stepped it up way better, and he could have released some of that information earlier on to try and at least start unpacking it. The news industry itself is narcissistic. I'm having this debate with people right now in my journalist groups. We've been one of my groups. We've been debating about Zucker and CNN. It's come out. There's a lot of information that's come out about Zucker, about Zucker lately. And even a high school classmate who wrote an essay about his narcissism in high school because they went to like prep school together or some shit. And the fact is, Zucker plays the nemesis of Trump. I love the people at CNN. I love the things that CNN gave me. I love a lot of people in the news industry, and I'll stand up for them. But the fact is, just like we were talking about social media and the responsibility it carries with the information that's out there, so do those big corporate-owned media companies. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all of them. They all have major responsibilities, and in this case, Woodward didn't follow through with his.
All right. Well, I linked an article from the Poynter Institute, poynter.org, about the ethics of Bob Woodward's actions in this case. And there's what I like about Poynter is they give you, they don't draw a conclusion, right? They basically talk about the pros and cons of how he acted. And one of the things that was said in the article, and I haven't done this because I'm actually kind of a dummy when it comes to how to use the Google tools. But in the article, one of the experts states that if you go to Google and you set your search terms to just show you headlines from February of 2020, you will find headlines that it was already out there that Trump was downplaying the virus. So there was, like, Woodward's take on this, but there was no news. By the time I verified it, lots of people were reporting that the president was minimizing the danger and the damage being done by COVID. So there was really no point for him to say it. Now, I what you're saying this is what's shifted for me since you've been talking, and this is, I guess, the teachability of me, right? Is that you're right. The tapes verify. This is not a thing where somebody said that it was reported that a White House aide once heard the president say. This is tape of the president actually saying it, and that is a big deal. That's a huge level of confirmability that we don't have in some of these other stories, like that he called the Trumps suckers and losers, right? We have a lot of people that are credible saying that, but we don't know who those people. There's no tape of the president saying, right? So that is an important point in this. However, that's never been how Bob Woodward releases information, at least not since Watergate. And even then, they were pretty sure they had Nixon before the election. right? They were pretty sure they had all they needed, but they were still waiting to make sure, to be editorially very careful before they dropped the bomb about what was actually happening in Watergate. And I like his explanation in that I think about a journalist that's on the street, and your experience with this is humbling to me. Like seeing the monk set himself on fire in Vietnam, seeing that policemen shoot the Viet Cong in the head on the street in Vietnam. Was the journalist's job to intervene there and stop that killing, or document what was happening and then show it to the world? So that's, to me, that's where Woodward was sitting here.
Because the photographer has said he regrets every day taking that picture.
Really?
But I've read that in several places where he's been interviewed and talked about it, and how because it's also been mentally damaging for him. But what's really interesting is there's a woman by the name of Ingrid Formanek, and you guys won't know her, but she was the producer for CNN in 1991 during the first Gulf War, when the CNN team decided to stay in Iraq and everyone left, and that's kind of what put her on the map. So she's somebody that I think a lot of women in the news business revere, and she has a rule. If it's a kid, you put your fucking camera down and you go help that kid.
Okay.
If it's not, you put your camera up and you report it and you document it. And I like that rule, because it shows that this is where we have to kind of create our humanity when it comes to that. There was no way that I could step in. But we've also seen Anderson Cooper and other reporters who would get out in the floods and they would help people, onto the rafts, because that's just simple humanity. So in the places where it's dangerous, you kind of have to have more boundaries, and you have to be the observer. In a place where you think you can do something, I think it's important, because journalists are frontline activists. So if someone's drowning and I've got a raft, I got to give them a raft. I'm not going to document it and let them drown. If I think my raft could help them and I could pull them, right? But I also don't advocate for journalists being martyrs either. So don't put yourself in a position where you think you're being so helpful that you are going to get yourself killed.
Or where somebody else has to come rescue you.
Right, or somebody comes to rescue you, right? So it's a weird line, and journalists actually go through this debate and through this fight very, very regularly.
Yeah.
When we had 4 colleagues in Iraq, they had died. Well, 3 out of the 4, 2 of them died. One of them was seriously injured, and one of them actually made it out okay, but still had to be hospitalized. When that happened, we found out that the deal was they had gone down a street that had not been cleared by the Army, but their fixer was trying to get out quicker and ended up going down a place that was unsafe, and they hit an IED, and the car blew. The first thing that most of us journalists did, we didn't even grieve about it. We had debates over beer about what we all knew the next day and how we avoid that situation so none of us died.
Right.
So there's a fine line with all of that, because you do need the journalist to be the observer, but we can't. I think the journalism industry has sometimes almost been too inhumane, where we're not actually being the advocates we need to be. There's debate right now going on about how to deal with Black Lives Matter, and journalists who are saying, I want to be able to go out there and support my colleagues, my Black colleagues who need me, but they're being told no by their bosses. So there's a lot of debate around this, but I definitely think that journalism is first and foremost a frontline human rights defender, and is a frontline human rights advocate. And if we are not occupying ourselves and our job within the context of holding oppression accountable, I don't believe that objectivity, the way that it is used, actually exists, and that objectivity in quote journalism didn't really come about until you had advertising. It didn't really come about until you had the powers that be who wanted to have a quote fair voice within the media. And that's when you begin to say, oh, everybody's got to be fair and objective and all that kind of stuff. And that's when it becomes into play. But the press, if you go to other countries, the press are most of the time they're activists, and it's
what
been
my friend Daylina would call advocacy journalism.
I don't actually see a problem with it.
Right.
Yeah, that's just journalism
right,
without a corporate mandate, right?
So it seems to me, to wrap this, we're kind of put a bow on this, right? It seems to me that, using the analogy that you used earlier in the conversation, that what Woodward's calculation was that he assessed what was being said, and in his opinion, somebody was already getting the drowning people rafts. By the time he understood the situation, that was already being done, and him doing it more would not have been more helpful. So I don't know that I hate that this is taking away that this argument is subsuming the argument that the fucking president of the United States, who absolutely had a duty to report to the American people that this was happening, did not do so. I hate that Woodward's taking any heat for this, because it's taking away from what should be the egregious bright light shining on the president, who, it was possible 30 days ago to think, well, maybe he really thought that. Maybe he really thought kids weren't getting infected. Maybe he really is dumb enough to have listened to Janine Pirro instead of Anthony Fauci, and he didn't believe what they were telling him. But now we know that that's absolutely not what was happening.
But I think
now this is the time for that consequence.
I do actually think that what the debate around Woodward is coming is actually a good thing, and the reason why is because the journalism industry needs a reckoning right now.
Is it right now or after the election? Because if it's after the election and he wins, does it matter? And my argument would be no.
If it doesn't, whether he wins or loses, the journalism industry needs its reckoning. Now's the time again.
Like if he wins, OAN takes Fox's. You know what I mean? I categorically see him winning as a potential existential threat. Right? Like
I'm not saying that, but the media,
Woodward gets locked up next year if he wins.
But if the media doesn't have the reckoning now, then he's more likely to win. So let's start our reckoning now.
I guess that's a compelling argument. It really is. Like I definitely don't want to seem like this isn't a nuanced issue.
If the media doesn't start looking itself in the damn mirror and realizing the damage that it's doing and that it has done, and at least start to make changes, even, I don't know, weeks before the election, it's more likely that he could win. Because right now, for example, like there's compelling argument that said Zucker helped make him president and gave him, and we know that he gave more airtime to him than Hillary. We know that.
Yep.
That's in the statistics. So if he's an example, and they're all culpable, they're all enable this, right? Because they're all his friends. His media made him friends. They help make him who he is. They put him on TV. They gave him entertainment. They helped do exactly what social dilemma. This really does tie back into our social dilemma conversation. They did exactly that, but they did it with media and entertainment. And so if media professionals can begin to really stand in the gaps in the places that they're meant to be standing in right now, maybe there's a better chance of the things going a better way than what they were going before, because media helped enable this. And
we have some shining examples of when that's happened before. The story of Katharine Graham in the Washington Post with the Pentagon Papers, right? That was an incredibly brave stand to take, and it cost her money. It nearly cost her the newspaper because of the fallout from it. So, so there's some history here of journalists and big media enterprises getting it right. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. I'm a Pollyanna with good hair. That's where I am today.
I guess I love this conversation here, right? In our family, this conversation makes sense.
Right.
And I'm certain that your voice inside journalistic circles is of immense value and leverage.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, if they're in any way, shape, or form smart, they're listening to you. I guess the issue that developed my position initially is that if you look on the rest of social media and a lot of the news, you're not seeing that. You're seeing a one-dimensional argument against Woodward being amplified by fucking idiots that redounds to the sole benefit of an authoritarian dictator.
Which is why you haven't seen me on my main page bring it up. I actually haven't posted about it on my main page. I have isolated my conversations to the journalism groups where we are actively able to unpack this, because that is where I feel I can
qualified experts. That's just crazy talk.
Nerds.
Exactly, nerds. But I mean, that's it. I haven't posted it on my page because I don't want to create the algorithm around that within my spaces. But I will go to, I'm on like 4 or 5 journalism groups, and I will go to one of them, and where it comes up when we have those conversations, that's when I feel like I'll make my stance in that. I do think Poynter is a great industry publication, and they're actually pretty good about how they kind of present that stuff. So it's definitely worthy conversation. But I think that's the other thing too, is what are you choosing to post? Are people choosing to post just whatever comes up, or are people saying, you know what, I've decided I'm not going to post that because I know where this is going to go, and I'd rather have the conversation in this space or that space, but not that space, because
right. And why I love Pointer is they basically don't draw a conclusion. They basically have smart, informed opinions on both, representing both takes on what Woodward did or didn't do, and kind of leave it hanging. And so that's why I linked it, because it's supportive of both arguments, that it could have gone either way. And again, when people say, well, what's going to happen next? Well, the reason we're all dying from anxiety right now is because we don't have any idea what's going to happen next, right? A story like this, we don't have, once it's out in the wild, we have no control over how it's going to.
Which, and it's another conversation for another day, but it's why I think just as a society, we need to take a deep breath and not necessarily have demand so much control over what we don't know.
Yeah. Well, my take, my considered uninformed, uneducated opinion is Trump bad, Woodward good. That's where I'm landing on this.
Yes, and the overall, yes. I will go with you.
Yeah, I'm definitely on that camp, but Ash also good, especially when she's going into journalism circles and whooping ass. So all of that is good for me.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we went a little long, and I'm so glad we did. This was a great conversation today.
Great.
You guys are awesome. And I was quiet for like a whole 15 minutes. Some sort of a
hey, if Ash wants to go on a rant, I'm just going to shut up. That's how that's going to work for me, for sure.
No, I enjoyed the banter and conversation always.
Well, thank you guys very much for a great morning. Great start to my morning anyway. Now I'm going to go eat breakfast. That's what I'm going to do.
That's a good idea.
All right. So you said you're going to the mountains. So you're like, I'm guessing you're going to the Von Trapp's secret hideaway.
Right. That's what I'm going. I am going to the Alps. That is for sure. So I will be in the Alps.
Nice. Okay. We'll climb every mountain.
Right. Exactly.
That'll just visit the Lonely Goat Herd. I know a lot more about Sound of Music than I probably should, but
you probably do.
That's happening. All right, fam. Thanks for joining us. We will, of course, be back on Wednesday. And,
you should all join Chirp. You should all join Chirp. Because there is a pun channel on Chirp now where we can all annoy the shit out of Corey every day. And also there is a Sasquatch is Real channel,
which is fun. That's very fun.
More Sasquatch.
Yeah, right. The Sasquatch meme game is pretty strong. I do have to say, Greg, like the fact that you got my mom starting posting puns this last week should have cost us our friendship.
Well, we all hate you, even your mom. So
exactly.
You know what? Some puns are just not okay.
They're all not okay. Ash, thank you so much for being on my side. God damn it. Anyway.
No more mom and dad jokes.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, this show is over.
Yeah.
Love you guys. See you Wednesday.
You should say the thing.
I did. I said there's a Sasquatch is Real channel on Chirp.
I guess that was sort of embedded in the whole.
Yeah, see.